All right, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for coming. So this is the Sprint Review. So this is a personal finance show that I do, and it's geared around tech professionals. Hence the whole idea of Sprint Review. So I used to be a software developer, and doing the whole agile process and everything. That the Sprint Review was our every 2 week meetup to just talk through how everything has gone. And so just like talking about a specific subject. So completely goofy, but it's what I decided to do. So anyway, yeah, so my name is Mike Zung. I am a certified financial planner, and I'm the owner of Java Wealth. So it's a financial planning firm. I'm based in Kansas City, but I work with people all across the U.S. Um, and yeah, so I've been doing this every 2 weeks, this live stream, for a few months now. Having a lot of fun with it. And along those lines, I've done one previous live stream where I brought someone in. So I brought in another planner named Keith Spencer, and we talked about buying a house and whether now's a good time to buy a house, just because the housing market was completely crazy. But anyway, in doing that, like I felt like that was a lot of fun, and so I've decided to do that more often and incorporate having more people come on. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. So first, just to talk through what the topic is. So the topic for this week, this sprint, is planning for a new baby. So just like all of the different financial aspects that come with having a new baby, bringing one home. I mean, whether that's a newborn, or also we might touch a little bit on whether you would adopt a new baby or a new child. So yeah, and with me today is Z Lee. So he is a certified financial planner, and he owns his own firm as well. And so Z and I know each other from a study group that we've both been in for the last couple years. And so he has agreed to come on and do this with me. So without further ado, I can introduce Z. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Mike. I'm doing,
Yeah.
I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's not that I agreed. I was more than willing to come on. Thanks for bringing me on. You make it sound like I'm super busy or have plenty of obligations, but no, I really appreciate, and I was looking forward to this time
Yeah.
coming on. You know, yeah,
Yep.
it's
Yep. Yeah. It's
great.
good. It's good having you on
Uh,
here. So I guess just first starting out, like, just give us a little background of who you are, where, like, yeah, what you do, what your firm does, and yeah, just a little bit of background.
yeah. Oh,
It's a big
those are the
question.
hardest questions, right? Those are the big questions. Yeah, My name is Z, like the letter. So it's pretty easy once I make that connection. They're like, oh, you're the last letter of the alphabet.
Yep.
But I'm based in New York. Like yourself, I have my own little small RIA shop, providing financial planning to mainly young families with like young parents with kids. That's the demographic that I'm in, and I know that there's some specific transitions and challenges um, that suddenly when you don't have a when you didn't have a kid, now you have a kid. There's a lot more things to think about. I also love to work with like single parents. I know they're
Mm,
often overlooked by this industry because of the maybe the stereotypes, like they don't earn enough to generate positive revenue for a lot of financial advisors. But I
yeah.
feel like if there's some folks that I would want to help and serve, it'd be single parents. Just the power of financial planning in their lives are just so rewarding. And finally, I'm a first generation um, Chinese American, Asian American, um, and so I was thinking like I want to serve first generation
Mm,
folks as well, because I think coming from a different culture, well, my parents coming from a different culture, they view money in one way, and they kind of instilled certain money values in me that sometimes clashes with the predominant American Western culture of finances. And
Yeah.
sometimes like I know for myself, like growing up caused a lot of conflicts, like internal conflict on my views of money and even conversations with my parents. Um, so yeah, I think I'm not the only one who probably has dealt with that. So first generation folks are fun groups for me to talk to and learn from and work with as well.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You know what? It's funny you say that. So for anybody else that's watching, we did not talk about that particular thing beforehand. We chatted about a few things, but that's not one. And I would almost like this is another this is a whole other show or other topic that I'm super interested in. This the idea of working with first generation immigrants, right? Um, yeah, so that's super interesting that you bring it up. And actually, there's part of it that I was thinking about bringing up and touching on with this around the cultural differences of expectations of parents and children and the relationship between the two, as first as babies and then as you get older too. So just to
Yeah.
tease that a little bit, we might maybe we'll get into that.
Is Are you saying that's another show, or are we going to talk about that later on today? Get to
Oh,
explore that together.
we'll see how things go. Maybe it'll be
Yeah,
part of this. Maybe it'll be another one too.
yeah. It's
Um,
definitely a big topic. Yeah, I know. This might be going off tangent, but like I know growing up, like my family did never talked about money, had no idea about investments. Um,
hmm
so me coming out of college, even as a young adult, had no knowledge of that. And if I could go back, and maybe I'm dating myself, like 10, 15 years when I'm out of college, like right, more than that. But I'll tell myself so many different things. But then I probably young Z would probably be like, "What are you talking about? All this sounds weird. You try to sell me something, get out of my face." So
Yep.
it's just so it's such a great topic that I
Yep.
love to kind of dive into.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, and then also another thing we didn't talk about beforehand is the with you talking about single parents. So I mean that's definitely a big. I definitely have a big soft spot for that as well. So I grew up. I guess you gave a little bit of your history, so I'll go ahead and reciprocate with some of mine. So I grew up. My dad was Vietnamese, so he was a first generation immigrant. But then and my mom was American, and but then my dad passed away before I turned one, right? And so like my mom was like she was the single parent, and I'm one of seven kids, and we're all within 9 years of each other. So my mom was in her early 30s, and was raising seven kids on her own. So it's like
Wow.
it was definitely the ultimate single parent achievement to raise all seven of us, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's amazing.
so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So definitely
Yeah.
like talking single parent stuff. It's like, oh man, like like they get so much more credit, or they deserve so much more credit than they actually get.
Yeah. It's
So
really like unfortunate. Like just the business models of a lot of financial firms,
yeah.
they get overlooked. Um, Yeah, but I think I mean if anything is interesting, the way the industry is moving in different business models, fee models, like
Mhm.
more of the traditionally underserved communities can now get served by financial planning.
Right,
So that's great. Yeah, but yeah, I remember
right.
you telling I remember we had we were having dinner in not
Oh
Colorado,
yeah,
but
yeah.
in St. Louis. Yeah, you were telling me about that story. It was just amazing how you how your mom and seven kids and
Yep.
even just where some of your siblings are right now, it's just really amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, that was a whole different beginning.
Yeah. We should get back on topic, right?
Yeah, no, and yeah, it's like a lot of that stuff is like, oh, there's a lot of really good topics we could be talking about right now.
Mhm.
But not to have a bait and switch. Today we're just gonna talk about what the different things you got to think about whenever you're having another baby. Um, and actually, before launching into any of that, I have the important job of saying the disclaimer. And so just
Mhm.
saying that everything that we're going to talk about here, it's just general explanations and education, and it's not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. And before considering acting on any of this stuff, then first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. And if you don't have one, then feel free to reach out to myself or Z, and we can try to help get you set up, right? So yeah. I guess first the way that I figured to start with it is actually just by quizzing you. So I pulled I
Pop quiz.
pulled yep, that's right. Yep.
Mhm.
So I pulled stats that said, talking about what's the average cost of raising a child from birth to age 18. Like
Okay.
what would be the dollar amount that it would take to raise a kid?
Are you gonna give me choices, or am I just gonna
No way.
give a
You
number?
just
Put a
yeah, you
number on a
just
napkin and
right. It's
well,
like Price is Right, as close as possible, but not over.
birth to 18. A lot.
Right.
I mean, any study that would do that would be a lot, but I think it's also an estimate. So I would say maybe 250,000, depending on what
Oh,
costs you would consider in terms of raising,
uh-huh.
um, in like today's dollars. And I'm saying that because there's a study in 2015 that the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, put out, like the cost with the title "Cost
Uh-huh.
of Raising a Child in 2015." Back then it was like 220 something, 2200 to 230. So
Yeah.
counting inflation,
Oh
maybe
man.
like 250.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Well, you've
How
done your
far? How
homework,
close?
because that's pretty much what it is. Yeah, that it's like basically, it's just under $250,000 to like
Wow.
from birth to age 18, and so the average around $13,000 a year.
Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty staggering. Almost
Right.
unbelievable, to
Right.
think like over the span of that much.
Right. Right.
What's the next question?
Actually, that's my only pop quiz
Oh,
question. I
that's
didn't
okay.
I didn't have like I didn't have a ton. I don't want to completely grill you
Oh,
as
okay.
soon as you come
Thank you.
on. So, um, so yeah, I mean, just kind of in setting it up of like, okay, yes, there's a lot of things to think about. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that's not financial that you got to think about whenever it comes to raising a kid. But then, from the perspective of the people that we're helping, whenever they're first, maybe they're having their first baby, maybe it's their second or third, and just thinking of different things. Um, yeah, so just to kind of think of like, okay, I mean, where do you start? What are the things to think about? Um, and so I guess I was kind of thinking that maybe a good place to start. So you're a relatively new parent. Your daughter Delancey is 2 years old, right?
Yeah, just a little over 2 years old. Yeah,
Okay.
and one of my low key fears right now is that you'll hear crying in the background, and I have to run out going off screen to tend to something. But so far so good. Yeah,
Right.
but yep, just turned two. She's great.
Okay. So I guess
Mhm.
from just first from anecdotal, your personal experience, how like how has that been? What has surprised you? Um, yeah, financially speaking, of course.
Yeah. Financially speaking, I guess I was talking to that $250,000 number. Sounds really big. I think
Yeah.
what really surprised me these past 2 years was, in some senses, like I didn't feel our lifestyle getting impacted. In a
Hmm.
sense that obviously before Delancey came along, um, my wife and I would be like, who are we gonna hang out with on Saturday night? What are some activities we can go do?
Yeah.
But now that now that she's here, like that kind of social aspect that we had before is really different now, and with that comes difference in like spending. So part of that spending probably got allocated to expenses with Delancey. Um, but I guess my surprise is that even though the study said it was $250,000, it didn't feel like she was, in terms of a financial burden, like
Right.
really impacted our lives. So from a cash flow perspective, I think we were lucky in that sense. Um,
Hmm.
I do have friends when we and we're parents. We became parents around the same time, so our kids are kind of like the same age. But yeah,
Hmm.
just sometimes healthcare expenses come up, depending on on the health of the child, or
Right.
other things. So it's like it varies. It's like the cost of raising a child it varies way more than anything you can make real good assumptions on.
Right.
I guess that's my take.
Right.
Um, yeah. I think other things that aren't really top of mind that me as a financial planner had to think about was our estate plans.
Mm.
Um,
Yep.
Prior to the landscaping law, we didn't have an estate plan. I didn't even know who my beneficiaries were on my 401ks and everything. But after that, my wife, who normally doesn't really care about finances, like she was super on board with our estate plan,
Hmm.
super on board with looking at our insurance coverage. So those are
Right.
things that might not be on top of mind, but definitely important to consider.
Right. Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I guess with the estate plan, that's definitely one. And I had it at the bottom, but we can go ahead and talk about it now. I mean, whenever it's just you or you and your spouse, then it's like estate planning never really feels that important, right? Where it's just like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. But then, with whenever you first, you know, you're first like, there's another life that is dependent on me, then there's a
Mhm.
lot more of like, okay, we need to get this figured out, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that extra motivation.
Yeah, I think the thing that really lit fires under our butts really is the idea that, wait, if something had happened to both of us before Delancey turns a certain age, you mean she can't get it's hard for her to get access to the like what we leave behind,
Right.
especially life insurance money. And then they were like, I used to, I grew up with a certain idea of trusts, the term trusts, and
Hmm.
trust kids and trust babies. But now I'm
Right.
like, whoa, trusts are like the best things in the world for like young
Right.
parents, right?
Right.
So yeah, those are some things that, like, as I learned more about it, just kind of motivated me more to kind of do it right, get
Hmm.
it in place. Yeah, but other things as well. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things another main thing from an estate planning perspective that I've found to be a difficult conversation for a lot of people, and one of the most important ones is that having those discussions about guardianship, right? So like, who would take care of the kids, the new baby or kids, in the event that you guys are both gone. Obviously it's like, it's such bummer subjects that we got to talk about, but it's also
Yeah.
just the most important stuff to talk about, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but I mean, yeah, getting that, having that guardianship conversation with your spouse, and then also having that guardianship conversation with whoever you're going to name, right? Because
Hmm.
that's definitely not a surprise that you want to give them.
Right. Yeah, and when I approached the guardian, or the potential guardian, I'm like, hey, they gave me like the weirdest of like, why are you asking me this? You're so young. So
Right.
it's just like that topic, rightly so, is probably not talked about. But I think it's one of the things you talk about it once and you feel good. You feel good. You get it done.
Right.
You don't need to worry about it for a little bit of time until another thing, maybe another big life transition. So
Right.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So that was that. I think one of the smartest things, if I were to look back, I don't do a lot of smart things, more often than not. But if there was something I could pat my shoulders on, like in the Chinese culture, and I still don't like the Chinese term for it. It means a month, but in practice is 100 days. But at the 100 day, there's like a big banquet, big ceremony, right?
Okay.
And you invite all your friends, family, and they're usually gifts that are exchanged. It's like 100 day. Like once the Lancey turned 100 days, we booked out this restaurant, invited friends and family. And it's pretty traditional in the Chinese culture, or maybe even East Asian culture. Um, But with those gifts, instead of like buying stuff for the Lancey, we put it in her 529. Like we seeded her
Okay.
529 account to just kind of get her started on saving for college, because that's another thing that
Yeah, yeah,
is is on probably on people's minds. And
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I guess maybe to try to maybe we'll take it a little bit, take a step back and go a little bit more in chronological order of kind of the different stages and different things to think about, right?
Mm.
So first I want to take it, before a baby arrives, then what different steps or what things do we need to think about and what steps do we need to take, right? So the first thing that I was thinking of is like the conversation. There's the part that's just talking about like how much leave you get, like from an employer's perspective, so
Mm-hmm.
maternity and paternity leave. So kind of understanding how much, like whether you can still get paid and how long you can be gone, and then yeah, and figuring out if you're wanting to stay home longer, then how to bridge that gap,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess I mean from your guys' perspective, like was that, did you run into any sort of issues or anything like that?
Uh, yeah, there was definitely I guess, a big. There's a kind of individual issue with us.
Hmm.
Whereas at that point, I was kind of like starting my business, so I don't have. I could give myself,
Right,
paternity leave as long as I
right.
want, but that comes at a cost of like building the business. But yeah, definitely like I seen parents either take their leaves together, or
Hmm.
one parent will take their leave first. And I think a lot of times the other parent could take it. Usually, it's the maternity leave. They take it right after, giving birth, and then
Right.
the father could take like staggered paternity leave just to
Hmm.
maximize the amount of coverage that one parent can have. Usually, with leaves, there is income replacement, either short term disability. I know my wife received short term disability.
Okay.
One
Yep.
thing to note about that is that usually that is considered taxable income for later on, which
Yeah.
we had to keep an eye out for. Um, but definitely, yeah, kind of thinking about cash flow and
Right.
how much you need to
Right.
get by, and how much you want to get by, and reviewing those things is really important. Um,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, I think a big part of it is, yeah, how much do you have, how much more income do you need, and then whether, like, how much of will your emergency fund cover it, right? Because
Right.
I think this is one where we can bless to say yes, this, you can use your emergency fund to bridge any sort of gap here, right?
Yeah, that's the problem with the term emergency fund. It's like, is this an emergency? And depending on how you see money, nothing might ever be an emergency, but sometimes it is. So
Right,
like,
right, right,
like you said, like this is why one of those where it might be good to tap into that, just to spend some extra time with the newborn.
right, right. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, if you have the means to save for it and be expecting it, then yeah, do that for sure. But
Mhm.
just assuming that you've exhausted any other short-term savings, then yeah, doing the emergency fund I think would be perfectly fine, right?
Yeah, and I've seen where couples were, they're going into the pregnancy, they're going through pregnancy, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna go back to work after the leave. But something happens when you see that newborn, and like a
Mm-hmm.
connection, and it's like, I really want to stay home.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that conversation, and at that point, it might be a sudden transition, but still, it's like it's something that you know, it's okay. At that point, just making adjustments in cash flow.
Right, right. Yep. Yeah, so actually, yeah, that's kind of the next thing I was thinking of as far as like staying home with the kids, like having that conversation of like before, preferably you would have that conversation beforehand, that it's not
Mhm.
something that after the baby arrives where it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do now.
Mhm.
And so yeah, because just taking from our perspective, so my wife was a school teacher whenever we had our first child, who's 13 now. So this feels a while ago. The gray hairs are starting to show.
I'm jealous of you. That's what it is.
Every stage has their pros and cons. There's like, I can't wait till this, but then whenever you get to that point, it's like I miss whenever they could do this. Right.
Right. Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
You just trade one problem for another, right? And also one good thing for another too. But yeah, so we knew that my wife was going to stay home whenever after we had our firstborn, and that's what she did for the first year. But then it got to, it's kind of like with anything with financial planning or anything else, where it's just like we're making the best decision with what we know right now. But then whenever you get to point B, to this other place, you just reevaluate. And so from our perspective, it was kind of that where it's like she stayed home for a year, but then after about that, it's like, like I'd like to have a little bit more adult interaction, and be able to get out of the house more and not just be I shouldn't say just be a stay-at-home parent, but, that I'd want to have a mix. And so that's that's the route that we took.
Yeah. So also, if I'm heard correctly, so your wife intended to be stay home, but then realized I need to get back out there.
Yeah,
Right.
to an extent. I mean,
Yeah.
and started some part-time work and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was before we had our firstborn, it was kind of that conscious decision of, okay, you're going to stay home now, and so thinking from a financial perspective, I'm trying to bring it back to finances, although
Hmm.
none of this stuff is really about finances. Um, that it's like planning for that loss of income, and almost like going through a trial run of the budget, uh, while we still had both incomes, right?
Mm.
So it's kind of doing a little bit of a trial with that too.
Yeah. Wait. So how did you do that trial run? Like, did you try to just like spend from one person's income? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, essentially doing something like that, where it's just like, okay, let's imagine that your paycheck is no longer going to arrive because it's going to be reality here pretty soon, right?
Hmm.
And so then we're just doing our monthly budgeting and everything just off of one income, and then trying to save the rest of it, and then also just prove to ourselves that we can do this, right? And that it's like adjusting to that lifestyle. So
Mm.
I talk to clients about lifestyle creep, for like where you kind of move up and spend to whatever however much is coming home. So it's kind of the
Hmm.
opposite of that. Like you're forcing yourself to shrink your lifestyle a little bit. Be like,
Lifestyle
okay, now
shrink.
I'm going to get used to this smaller fishbowl now.
Yeah. I've heard like people trying that, and that's
Yeah,
such a interesting and amazing strategy, because if possible, that's pretty eye opening. And
yeah,
I could imagine if your value is really in like saving, oh, that's great. But yeah,
right,
but
right.
you guys were able to do that, right? Was it how was that like trial?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It wasn't too bad. I'll be fully transparent, where it's like, I was working in IT, and working in the Midwest in IT. It's like I mean, I'm not making Bay Area money, but it's like in the cost of living and everything that we were able to live comfortably enough.
mhm.
And then and then this is a whole other tangent that I could go on right now, is like being a school teacher. Like, people don't become school teachers for financial reasons, right? And so losing her income wasn't as huge of a hit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a whole other soapbox rant of how underpaid teachers are. So
I just had a thought. It's like it's STEM, not STEMmed, right?
right,
The core areas of study nowadays. Right.
right.
Yeah, but definitely, yeah, teachers are super underappreciated, underpaid,
Yep,
in many ways.
yep.
Uh, mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess so yeah. Talking through yeah, the leave, yeah, the maternity paternity leave. Talking about like whether one of the uh, spouses is going to stay home, And then also just kind of thinking from, so the next part would be just the day-to-day budget kind of stuff, like different, like what new expenses are there that weren't there before,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And and so it kind of sounded like from your perspective there was that it was a little bit of a surprise of like actually our day-to-day expenses didn't shift that much.
Yeah. It didn't shift that much, if I remember, you know, two
Yeah,
years ago. Or it shifted, but not enough that I really felt like it was a crimp on our lifestyle.
right.
But to your point, like some of the expenses that I didn't think about or was probably not able to think about unless somebody
Hmm.
actually like walked me through and told me like you're gonna spend on these things. Like, but even if they did that, I probably wouldn't have believed them until I went through them. It's like, man, they were right. But yeah, like they're newborns. They're just so different. There's no standard,
Hmm. Right.
and they have a mind of their own. They have preferences. So I know we went through like 20 different baby bottle brands because at one point the landscape was just not taking. And we're like, we need you to take. There was one point where I had to drive out. My wife works for the city. She's a city employee. Yeah. So this is before remote work for everyone, but like
Uh-huh.
I would drive out so that the Lancey could be fed, right?
Uh-huh.
Simply because like she wouldn't take a bottle. So we went through like we had to really try on error all these different brands. Prior to becoming a parent, I'm like, why are there so many different brands and different styles? This is just a complete rip. But now I realize newborns have preferences, and you just don't
Right.
know. Yeah, it's a lot of those things. It's like some things that they might take to, some things they may not take to, and you just gotta spend on it, even though
Right.
you didn't plan on it.
Right.
Diapers is one, but
Right.
diapers I actually don't feel like it's like when people think about diaper expenses, they think that's like the highest cost of having a newborn, but it's actually not.
Right.
You just kind of adjust, and there's always deals and sales, and I guess that's another thing with anything with baby products and even kid products. The range that you could spend is way higher.
Right.
You could get budgets to like luxury.
Right.
They have a price point for every budget. That's what I guess what I'm saying.
Right.
But those are some of the unexpected expenses that you know. Yeah, I think it didn't make a big hit on the again. It wasn't a lifestyle crimp, so to
Right.
say, but it was something that didn't account for.
Right. Right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and that I felt like I had a very similar experience where I was thinking it's like, oh man, it's just going to be diapers and formula all the time, and that's just going to blow my budget. Or our budget, not mine. But yeah, like honestly, like that part wasn't, like people put a focus on it, but that's not what it is, right? Yeah, so there's, I mean, that's definitely a part of it. But whenever they're newborns, then it's not so much. It's like it's whenever we get, I have a son who's 9 right now, and like whenever he gets to be 16 and just like pounding gallons of milk, that's whenever like food is gonna be a lot,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, it's not so much that. I mean, but there are like a lot of those like big unexpected expenses. Especially, I mean, baby showers definitely help, but getting car seats and cribs and oh man, I'm forgetting like half of like the different kinds of swings and all that stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
actually, whenever I was telling my wife about what we were going to talk about this time, and she's like, just make sure that you get a lot of C and D batteries, because like every baby thing that you get like needs big old honking batteries, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's something I'd never bought batteries if I had to buy like value pack. I remember that. I
Right.
think I'm kind of what you said before. Like the different types of costs also changes as they get through age. Like you said,
Hmm.
as your son gets to like 16, it's gonna be food, like those gallons of
Right.
milk. I think for newborns, the biggest outside of housing, and depending on how you consider housing,
Hmm.
um, the another large cost is thinking about childcare expenses.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
probably another one, especially if both parents are going back to work. Um, that's probably a big cost. For me,
Yep.
I was a little bit flexible. Like I said, I was just working from home, building my business, so I had that time to provide
Hmm.
childcare while my wife still had her job, was still working at her job. So, but childcare is definitely an expense
Yeah.
um, to
Yep.
consider.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess so try to get a little bit of financial planning help from us as far as the childcare expenses. I guess maybe I'll tee it up for you. So what are some of the ways to help offset the cost of childcare, like different tax advantaged ways of doing it,
Oh yeah, and we got to provide some sort of value to our to
right?
whoever's watching, right? Yeah, I think this year especially, I think it's pretty interesting year with with the Biden administration and the American Rescue Act that was passed this year. But I think today, a timely day, like today,
Yeah.
for a lot of parents, like they're getting some extra money in the form of the technical term is like a pre-credit, where we're
Right.
getting some money every month, from the government to spend. Not necessarily on the kid, but just kind of help with cash flow.
Right.
So that's definitely its advantage for this year. They expanded the dependent care tax credit, which is separate from the child tax credit. A lot of
Right.
people get that confused. They think it's like the same
Right.
thing, but no, it's two separate things. But the dependent care child and dependent care tax credit, they expanded that as well, so that if both parents need to work, they could be able to afford sending their kids to childcare. There's always dependent care FSAs that some employers
Yep.
offer, which is actually low key a really good, um, really good tax advantage savings account, so to say, especially for those high earners. It's one of those things where the higher your tax bracket, bigger the bigger advantage it is to you. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's another one of them that comes to the top of my mind. Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
Any other ones that you can think of, or add on that?
no, yeah, I mean you definitely hit on a lot of them, and just to kind of try to expand on it a little bit. So I guess first, maybe I'll go back to front from what you just said. So first, from a dependent care FSA, so that would be that's something that would be available through your employer, right? Through like it's a potential employee benefit, right? Where you can elect to put money into the dependent care FSA, and and it the money that goes in there is not taxed, right? So you get the tax break on it. And then if you use that money for childcare expenses, then you don't have to pay any sort of taxes or penalty on it there. So it's basically being able to pay for childcare with tax-free money or pre-tax money,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I think not only regular income tax, but also, if I understand correctly, like the FICA tax percentage,
Oh,
right?
right. Yep.
Like
Yeah.
that is also something that's what, 7-ish% already
Right. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
anyone. So
The Social
that's,
Security and Medicare. Yeah.
yeah. So that also gets saved by using the dependent care FSA. So that's
Yep. Yeah.
yeah.
So with that, there's they increased the limit for how much you can put into a dependent care FSA this year, right?
Yeah,
Um,
only if your employer increases the limits. So
yeah. Yep.
yeah. So folks might want to march up to their bosses, like, increase the
Right.
limit.
Right. Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
5,000 was the previous limit, but I think it can be up to like 10,000 and change, if I understand right. But informational. Don't go out there and fact
Yeah.
check me, right?
And so like whenever with like government tax benefits, it's all these numbers are
Right.
specific to one program. It's like it's so hard to keep track sometimes. But yeah, I
Right.
think they expanded the limit that
Right.
you can put aside for dependent care FSA.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and then then the next one being I guess the actual tax credit. So what you were saying is like the child independent care tax credit.
Mhm.
And that got expanded this year as well, and the percentage and how much qualifies for that credit, and then also what percentage of a credit you'd get based on the expenses that you have.
Yeah, it's really big. Like, when I look at it, I'm like, so if you have like one child, if you
Hmm.
spend up to $8,000 in
Yeah.
those expenses, you can theoretically get 50% back, like
Right.
$4,000 back. And
Right.
previously, and this is only 2021 for now, but previously, it's like if that credit wipes out your tax liability, that's it. But this year, it's fully refundable,
Right.
so
Right.
you can actually get money back
Right.
from the government. So that's not a small
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the last one, it's not so much a child care thing. It's just saying like, hey, you can get a tax break, you get a tax credit because you have a kid now, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
just for
yeah,
having
that's
a kid.
yeah, just the fact that you have a kid, that yeah, there's the child tax credit, and so in previous years it was $2,000 a year, per child, per dependent child. And this year, yeah, there's kind of a couple things that they did, and yeah, and that it's going into effect today. One is that they increased that credit from 2,000 to, I guess it's 3,000 if your child is from ages 6 to 17, or 3,600 if your child is 5 or under,
Yeah.
right? And so yeah, so that's kind of the first part of it. There's income limits to it as well, as far as when that kicks in. Um, but assuming you're below those income limits, then the other part of it that's starting today is they're going to start advancing half of that credit to you, beforehand. Oh, my dog's barking. Sweet. Yeah, so that they'd be advancing half of that to you, like for every month for the rest of the year, and then you'll get the rest of that credit at the end of the year, or whenever you
Yeah.
file.
Yeah, it's like an advanced credit. That's the right term, advanced credit for it.
Right.
I think the beauty of that one is that there's really no work needed to be done on parents' part, as long as they
Right.
have. I mean, definitely if you have a kid in 2021, I mean the government probably wouldn't know to give you that the credit for that kid. So when you file your taxes, that's when it kind of trues up. So
Right.
if
Yeah.
qualify for the credit, people will get the money. It's just like when they get the money.
Right.
Yeah, and and I guess being financial planner, there's just like so much you can do with tax credits, from you know Roth conversions.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That
Right.
could be
Right.
something. It's just like really interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
there you
Yeah.
go. On cue.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty interesting year,
Right.
2021. Yeah.
Yep.
And talks are that they might want to extend that, those make it permanent, at least for foreseeable future.
Right.
Um, but it'd be pretty hard to go back to the old system,
Right.
I would
Right.
imagine. Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. So actually, so with what you were just saying, with the 2021 like advance payment of that, I actually looked it up. And so so the IRS is actually going to have a portal, or a spot where you can, if you did have a child in 2021, you can actually go in and say as much that you did, if you want to start getting that advance tax payment
Hmm.
too.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, yeah, that you would just get it at the end of the, like whenever you file your 2021 taxes, but
Hmm.
they're actually thinking of people that have kids in 2021 to be able to make updates to their profile and say, hey, I actually have another dependent, so you can start
Yeah.
getting that advanced tax credit.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that brings me to my question. Something I've
Mhm.
been thinking about. It's like now that people could be getting $300, like a good increase to their cash flow a month. It's like, what are some of your thoughts on like recommendations or ideas that they can do with that? Again, strictly
Mm.
informational. This is an
Right,
informational video.
right. Yeah, it's all very personal, right? Yeah, so I guess the first thing is, while it's not going to be a huge difference, so if in previous years you're used to getting a $2,000 credit on your taxes, right? And if you get these advances, say you have one kid that's an 8-year-old, right? That you're now getting $1,500 in advance, but then you're only going to get $1,500 whenever you file your taxes. So there's actually $500 of that you would want to like keep in mind that that's $500 that that you used to get back or whenever you would file your taxes. So first it would be like, hey, make sure that you like run the numbers to figure out what your tax liability is going to be, and if you're not withholding enough, then you might need to actually just save some of that money, right, to pay for the tax bill, right? Um, I think some people are blowing that out of proportion to make it sound like a bigger problem, because with the increased overall tax credit, the difference between previous years and this year is at most $500, right? Although I guess per kid, so you can kind of do the math out with that. Um, so that would be the first thing, and then really after that, honestly, it just falls into the different priorities of what's next on the list, right? Do you need to increase retirement savings? Do you need to increase education, like actually apply it to the kid that's giving you this extra tax credit, right? Um, yeah, or I mean, I personally don't think that there's anything wrong where it's just like, hey, you can use some of it for, another experience, like an extra vacation or a little bit nicer vacation, because I'm definitely all about, using money in a way that like is most fulfilling for you, right? It's always this balance of living for now and saving for later, right?
Yeah.
And I know as from a financial planner perspective, it's very, the the common feeling of what we would say is like, make sure you save for retirement, save for college, and that save, right? But
Yeah.
there's striking that fine balance of of how much living you do now versus saving for later.
Yeah. Yeah. Back to your experience point, I think that's underrated in many senses because let's say with that extra credit, you're able to, give an experience to your family. Like, and depending how old your child is, like if they
Right.
remember. Right now, the
Not
last
these
part
newborns.
that's if I bring her to Disneyland, it's just like a waste for her. It'd be great for me and my wife, but
Yeah.
yeah, like some of these experiences could really like kind of spark like an interest, a curiosity that could lead to future developments and interest
Hmm.
um, down the line. So I think yeah, it's pretty underrated experiences. That's the thing. Interesting that you brought up the tax liability part.
Mm.
And but yeah, I think for me, I think the biggest thing is just have an idea of what you want to do.
Right.
Because so many times it's like you get an extra windfall, so to say, without an idea of it. Sometimes you might spend it on things that later on you look back,
Right.
it's like, oh, that didn't really bring value that I wanted to.
Right.
So probably just having an idea of how to spend that extra cash that you're getting from the government.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the telling your money where to go rather than wondering where it went.
Yep. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep. All right. So yeah, actually, just to kind of wrap up a little bit. So kind of talking through a lot of the expenses. Yes. So we talked through a lot of the tax stuff. I'm trying to think. The only other thing I can think of from a tax perspective is, and it kind of plays along with what I was just saying of knowing what your tax liability is that it's like maybe you do adjust your withholdings based on what your new tax bill is going to be because of the different credits and everything that you might be getting. So if you want to take that money home sooner before you actually file your return, then potentially updating your withholdings and adding just updating that, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'll probably say so. So the Reddit question that I have talks about 529s a little bit. So maybe we'll save that for that. Um, but then the other one is around insurance, right? And so yeah, I guess first maybe the easier one would just be talking about health insurance, right? That it's just like during that time, then it's a qualified life event. So
Hmm.
just making sure that you understand that of like adding your child to your life or to your health insurance plan.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
So it's one of those opportunities where the enrollment window opens up because of a life event.
right,
And definitely you want to add the newborn to the family plan.
right.
But sometimes maybe you've been neglecting different plans. You might be on
Hmm.
a high deductible plan, but depending on the health of your child, it would make sense to switch to a like a PPO plan or
Yeah,
vice versa. But that's something to consider. I think usually you get like 30 days to make that
right.
election.
Yeah,
So with everything that's going on, once birth happens, like that 30 days flies quick. So definitely put something on the calendar to say I got to call, I got to make the election,
yep,
just so
yep,
that they're covered. Yeah.
yeah, yep, yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's definitely a big part. And then I guess from other insurance, so life insurance, right? I guess maybe I'll open it up to you. So I guess what different things from a life insurance perspective would you want to think about with having a new child?
Yeah, just I mean, just off the top of my head, definitely life insurance. Most people get it if you're an employer, you get something through the company. The typical thing is like one extra salary,
Yeah,
but you might need more. Some things to think about in terms of how much more is like. Well, if I really want to save for provide for my kids' college expenses, that could be something. Um, what happens if one of us passes and childcare expenses.
right,
So kind of coming up with a number is like, if that were to happen, this is how much it'll cost. So this is how much life insurance I'll need for that one need. Think of the
right,
different needs and then kind of add it up to see. But yeah,
right.
that's something to consider.
Yep, yep, yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things. That life insurance is one where if you look up like how much life insurance do I need, there's all these rules of thumb of just like 10 times your salary, right? And really whenever it comes down to it, it's completely different for someone who is single versus this couple that just had a new baby, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just kind of going through what you're talking about of figuring out what the needs actually are. It's again playing out these scenarios that like no one likes thinking about, but it's very important to think about. Is like if I were to pass away, what do I want to have happen financially for the people that are that I would like cared for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Wow.
education, childcare, that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and then I guess from a timing perspective, that's where the term life insurance it's good from the perspective of you get a term life that's long enough to cover while your kid is on the payroll, essentially,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Before they can go out and make their own livelihood.
Right, right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely that. Yeah, it could definitely get very nuanced, but I mean,
Hmm.
like just broad information, like that's definitely something to consider.
Right.
And yeah, it depends on the family. If it's a
Hmm.
single income family, that's pretty important. The
Right.
spouse itself might need life insurance too. The spouse
Right.
that's not working might need life insurance because childcare or something.
Right. Right.
Right. So those are things to think about.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. So I think now would be a good time to we'll segue into our
Trend
Reddit question of
transition.
the week. I know. I need to like create this little like cool transition like Reddit question of the week. You know. But
Or
I
those
definitely
sound
don't.
drops on
Right.
podcasts, right? Those things.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So. So yeah, so as far as the question that I picked, obviously it's very topical to what we're talking about. So here's a question that talks about asking about a 529 versus a Roth for a new baby. So this person is pregnant. She says, "I'm pregnant with our first child and want to start a savings account for the baby for college. Has anyone looked in depth into the benefits of a 529 versus a Roth?" Says, "My husband and I both have retirement Roth IRAs and contribute the max to them, so I'm not even sure if we could start a Roth for the baby currently. Is there a way around that?" And says, "For 529, what are the downsides? What if our kid doesn't need it for education costs? What can we do with it then?" Okay, So there's a few different things that we could do inside of here.
Hmm.
So I guess first let's talk about I guess maybe just like what a 529 is, right? You want to take it or you want me to? I'm game either way.
I feel like you're a way better explainer than me. That's why you have a black, like a whiteboard
Right?
behind me.
Yeah, I could go into the whiteboard view and do that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, actually,
but yeah.
yeah. Well, and maybe a shameless plug. Like I actually have a whole series of college savings and 529 plans, but
Hmm.
so a 529, it's basically a way to save for college, and you get the tax benefit that you get is like you still pay taxes whenever it goes into the 529. At least from a federal perspective, states you can sometimes get to deduct that amount from state taxes, depending on which state you're in. But then the money goes in there, you invest it similar to the way that you would inside of a 401k. You just have your mix of stocks and bonds. And then whenever your child or your beneficiary goes to college, then you can use the money from that 529, and it won't be you don't have to pay any taxes on it. Like any of the gains, you don't get taxed on that at all. So that's the basis of a 529. Um, and then I guess
I think you got
then
it.
maybe okay, yeah, good. So then how about what a Roth IRA is just classically?
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe I could feel that one.
Yeah.
Um, a Roth IRA is designed for saving for retirement primarily, but you save into a Roth IRA with money that you already pay taxes on. The money that is in a Roth IRA, you can invest it in many different assets. It really depends on the institution that what it allows you to. And ideally, is that as those assets grow, there's no tax on the growth of those assets. When you finally withdraw from a Roth IRA, and qualify withdrawals completely tax free. So the tax benefits, two layers of tax benefits while it's in the Roth IRA, while the assets are in the Roth IRA, and when you
Hmm.
withdraw, it's completely tax free. Um, one of the features of a Roth IRA is that there's certain withdrawals that you can pull out that would be considered qualified withdrawals, even though it's not for retirement. Among them is paying for college expenses.
Right.
So there is that possibility of using Roth IRA funds and earnings, contributions and earnings to pay for college expenses. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, kind of get into that, and this will be interesting because I have my own opinions about that strategy. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess first thinking of I guess first to this next question of could you start this question of uh, yeah, could you start a Roth IRA for the baby?
Yeah. I
Right.
like what the poster is thinking. Roth IRAs are really great tools. But no, unfortunately, I do not believe the newborn baby can save into IRA unless the newborn baby is able to generate earned income for itself, for his
Right.
or herself. Um, Child modeling, I've heard in some circles, are ways to allow your child to kind of to generate some earned income, and with earned income, you could then save into a Roth IRA.
Right.
So one of the stipulations of IRAs is that you need earned income, um, a very
Yep.
technical earned income. So that's one way, but otherwise, it's kind of hard to
Right.
save into the
Right.
IRA legitimately
Right.
for a
Right.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've definitely heard that a lot. If there is a way to like to say that this child has earned income in some way, then yes, you can open up a Roth IRA and do that. And of course, yeah, this baby modeling is a very common one, especially for small business owners, where it's like I'm going to take a picture of my kid and going to put it on my website, and I'm going to pay them as a model, right? And
Hmm.
I'm not going to say don't do that by any means because it's yeah I'll try to skirt around that a little bit. The way that I view a lot of the gray areas is that imagine you're sitting across from an IRS auditor And if you can say with a straight face that yes, what I did was completely on the up and up, then by all means, but that's my litmus test of
Yeah.
of, and that you're paying a fair wage, right? Because it's like, oh, you snapped one picture of your kid and then you just put $6,000 into the Roth IRA because they earned 6 grand for that, right? It's just like, okay, let's not get
But the
crazy here.
picture the picture is priceless.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
not to the IRS. Maybe to you, but not the IRS.
Right,
Um,
right. Yeah.
so yeah, you're right with that. And so then the next part of the question of what do you think about using the parents' Roth IRA to fund to possibly help fund college?
Yeah, I like you kind of alluded to. You kind of have some thoughts on that, and I think that's the beauty of financial planning. It's like it's an art. I think it depends
Hmm.
on like the couple's individual circumstances. It sounds like this couple they're maxing it out. They're pretty good savers, so there is a point where I think you could save enough for retirement.
Hmm.
Whereas if the goal of retirement is to make sure you don't run out of money during those years when you're not making an income, that that can be done. Um, so if you're on track for retirement and maybe if you don't have a 529, and depending on what other assets you have that you can draw liquidity from, a Roth is just an option. So it's
Right.
definitely not something you've discounted, but then definitely had to be weighed against all the other kind of liquidity options that they have to pay for
Right.
college.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and state my case. Um, the main problem that I have, well, first, everything that you said I completely agree with. Yeah, there are some scenarios where it's like, yes, it could make sense to take money from the parents' Roth IRA to pay for college, and from my perspective, that's if they already have a lot of retirement savings in general, and then also a lot of Roth retirement savings, right? So like, maybe their Roth 401k and stuff like that. But more generally speaking, I I hate to see money get taken out of a Roth IRA that's not that hasn't fully realized all of the potential that it has, right? Because whenever money, like people, you know, some people go through a lot of hurdles and a lot of hoops to get money into a Roth account, because once it's in there, then you invest it and it try to make it grow gangbusters and it never gets taxed again, right? And so if so I guess I'll be in my mid 40s whenever my daughter starts going to college, right? Mid to late 40s. So we'll say mid. Um, and and to think that I'd be taking money out of a Roth account in my 40s rather than let it grow for another 20, 30, 40 years, tax free, that kind of hurts me a little, right? And
Mhm.
so that's why I definitely lean toward, like, whenever people are kind of starting out and like, oh, maybe I should just do a Roth IRA instead. It's like, no, Roth IRA, keep it for, like, that's your long-term retirement money.
Right. And I mean, it sounds like this couple, this lady has enough. Like they're already maxing out their Roth IRA, and they have
Hmm.
extra money. Um, that 529 would make sense. But I guess curious for you for those who have to decide saving for their kids' college versus saving for their retirement.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts around that? Not
Yeah.
recommendations, or
Right,
just
right.
thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that actually, I used to be a lot more hardlined about that. It's like you always save for retirement first because, there's the line of you can get a loan for college, but you can't get a loan for retirement, right? And in general, I'm still more along those lines. But actually going full circle from a cultural perspective, there are some cultures where, like, education is the way out for people, or like, I mean, it's very deep and personal to make sure that their kid gets educated, right? and
Mhm.
so and so like, I have no problem with, like, hey, we're going to be aggressive on the 529 to make sure, yeah, because, like, that's what you want to do. You want to like if that's really important to you to provide for your kid to get an education, then like yeah, it's like we're not gonna do it just completely ignoring retirement, but if you're wanting to like you want to tilt a little bit that way, then I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. It's actually speaking of like a friend of mine I recently spoke to, how that kind of education value played out in his life as he grew up. It's
Hmm.
like as he looks back, it almost feels like there's a delineation of responsibility. For him,
Uh-huh.
his responsibility was studying and doing the best that he can. That's his primary responsibility growing up as a kid in his family. But he knew that parents would provide for, I guess, everything else. Like that's just like
Oh, right.
value wise, yeah. The value
Hmm.
wise, like yeah, definitely some cultures are huge on the education aspect, and I think
Hmm.
yeah, it's some
Right.
like a lot of these decisions are also value decisions,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily just like numbers decisions too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, this is somewhat amazing how this is playing out with having you on and what we're talking about in this subject, because from a cultural perspective, I don't know if like specific families and everything, but I know a lot of the Vietnamese side of my family, right? Like there's just an expectation of the the older generation that it's like whenever as I get older, my kids are going to take care of me, right?
Hmm.
Like there's like it's I wouldn't say burden, but it's like there's an expectation that kids take care of their parents and their elders, right?
Hmm.
And so in a strange way, that can kind of play into this of just like as the parent, I am going to support my kid. I'm going to make sure they get a good education and that they have a successful job so that whenever I'm older and retired and in need, that my kid is financially able to be the one to support me. So it's like the retirement plan is somewhat the child, right?
Yeah, part of the retirement plan would be some of the child. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. They're
I mean,
diversifying their
probably
retirement
never.
plan.
That's yeah, exactly right. They're diversifying, um, but yeah, I mean, I think that's it goes back to like value. So much of finances is we like to think it's rational and it's all about optimization and efficiency, but so much of it is like really our values, and
Hmm.
those values are could be different for between you and I, even though we might come from the same background. But yeah, it's amazing.
Right.
Um, yeah, and helping clients uncover that is, I feel like something that I love to do. It's
Yeah.
one of the best things I like doing in what we're doing.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
Awesome.
Wow. Oh, we took talked more than we thought. I thought we were gonna be on.
I told you, time flies whenever once you start, it's like, oh man, I think I might be able to cover 20 minutes, and an hour and 10 minutes later, and we're still going. Right.
This was a lot of fun, and hopefully,
Yeah.
the viewers got something out of this. Hopefully, but
Yeah.
I certainly really enjoyed chatting. Like,
Yep. Yeah. 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 I appreciate you coming on. Yeah. Basically, I guess just kind of in conclusion, you know, just with the whole idea of planning for a new baby is that uh, one of the big takeaways that I was getting from it is that it's like so much of it is just about open communication about sometimes really tough subjects, right? I mean, especially between the spouses and figuring out like whether someone's going to stay home, all that kind of stuff. Obviously the day-to-day budget, and then having these conversations around estate planning and life insurance and all that stuff and guardianship. That it's just like that's just the biggest thing is that it's like, hey, you got to open up that communication even more. Like it's already open whenever like whenever you're
mhm.
getting together, but now that you have a kid, then it's a whole nother level, right?
Yeah. No, I love the way you put it. Like that is probably the biggest takeaway, just open communication. And I would add just being able to make adjustments.
Right.
The best laid plans are just plans until you get punched in the face, like Tyson. I just mishmashed a lot of different quotes, but Yeah.
It's probably like Benjamin Franklin and Mike Tyson together somewhere.
Like, yeah, something like that. Because they're great complementary, Ben Franklin and Mike Tyson.
Right, right. Yep.
uh,
All right. Well, yeah. I guess just real quick. Yeah. Where can people find you?
uh, yeah. So I'm I'm not the best on the internet. I have a LinkedIn profile. My company's name is 122 Capital,
Yep.
and I really regret having such a long name because my email is just 5 letters, but it's 12 spell 12
Yeah.
to capital. My website is 122capital.com. I have an Instagram, I have a LinkedIn, but I'll try to. I tell myself to be more active and try to publish more
Yeah.
valuable content out there. So you might see me more out there.
All right.
But
All right.
website is the best place.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I already actually have a link to the website in the
Yeah,
comments. So
appreciate
that's
that.
what.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
All right. Cool. Well, I think that's it. So I appreciate it. And yeah, maybe I'll have you back on whenever we talk about multi-generation or like first generation immigration
yeah,
planning and stuff like that.
yeah. That'd
So
be great to explore. Yeah. No, thanks
yeah.
for having me, Mike.
All right. All right. Cool.
All
Thanks.
right.
See ya.
Okay. Have a good one. Bye.
Yep.